Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life's strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the misty depths of the mysterious and unknown. A haunting. So here's a little background story before jumping into this. I'm 10 years old, and my dad, his girlfriend, and her 5 kids, all living at her grandparents'. My dad ended up finding an old small house for rent in Florida. We all moved in there. Everything was fine, but only for a few days. My dad's girlfriend, Jennifer, started to notice, for example, that her stuff would go missing after leaving their bedroom, which eventually turned into things flying across the room. Picture frames that were sitting on the nightstand would suddenly slam down, then set back upright. My dad would hear little kids running up to their door at night, thinking it's her kids, but yank the door open to find all of us sleeping on the couch. My dad thought it would be a great idea for them to have an EVP session, which was not a great idea at all. They talked and they asked questions for a minute, and then Jennifer decided to start talking to the entity, saying it needs to give her back her stuff. They play the recording, and after that part where she's being rude, you hear this loud static. Get out! They both run into the living room to where the kids and I are, and they sit down on the couch, just freaked out. They started telling me what happened, and not even a minute later, loud footsteps came charging from their room towards us. All I see is Jennifer being picked up by her shoulder and shoved towards the front door. Everyone started to run out. My dad jumps over the defenseless baby on the floor, out the door. And I was just sitting there frozen. I finally got the courage to get up, grab the poor baby, and run out the door. We all ran to the neighbor's house, telling them what happened. They came over to try to bless the house, and I could see them through the window from the outside. The lights were flickering, and things were being thrown around like a tornado. It was just like a frickin' movie. I'm just stuck there in awe that things like that could even happen in reality. After the craziness, we all piled up inside of the car, leaving our belongings in the house, and we went back to her grandma's where they dropped the kids off and myself, and they went to Dad's friends. While at his friends, they were talking about everything that had happened. His friend, Corey, asked to hear the recording. So my dad goes to show him, and his phone just completely stopped working. Corey just started laughing, saying they're making things up. A minute later, Corey's phone dings, so he picks it up, and the recording starts playing on his phone by itself, though my dad never sent it to him. It goes straight to the part where it says, "Get out!" Corey looks horrified and just stands there. He starts saying he feels weird, and then raises his arm that is slowly starting to get covered in giant bumps, which then cover his whole body. His eyelids turn all red and puffy, and then his actual eyeballs turn black. Water starts pouring out of them like a faucet. He reaches out for my dad, but my dad and Jennifer make him fend for himself and dip out, peeling out of the yard. A few days later, he feels bad and calls Corey to ask what happened and if he's okay. Corey starts to respond, but his voice is then quickly cut off by the same static voice saying, "You're next." My dad broke the whole flip phone in half and threw it out of the window while he was driving. So a week goes by, and my dad still has to get our stuff out of that old house. Him, Jennifer, and some other friends go back to the house, leaving Jennifer sitting in the car because she's just too scared. My dad then goes inside and starts taking pictures with a camera, like for how ghost hunters do. He looks back at the pictures to see faces in the window with black pits for eyes and mouths along with Jennifer's birthday written on it. While this is going on, Jennifer is in the car, seeing these black, lanky beings with freaky eyes watching her from the porch, trying to get her to look at them. Every time she looks, they get all riled up like a bunch of dogs in a cage, bumping into one another, going crazy like they're trying to get at her. She starts to feel something taking over her body, starting at her feet, rising up her legs. She starts kicking her legs like something's grabbing onto them. She runs out of the car and yells for my dad. Then they all piled up and they left again, with our belongings still inside for the house to keep. Jennifer and my dad came back to her grandma's, and we were hoping that everything would be over and that we're all gone from the house now. Well, no. We got followed. For months after that, it continued to mess with Jennifer. She would see black plastic bag looking entities flying around the ceiling while she tried to sleep. Things she would go to grab would slide out of her reach, and she would have bad luck constantly. One of the nights they were outside talking, Jennifer started acting really nervous and scared. She told my dad to take a picture beside their car. He did, and when they looked at the picture, a horned, jagged toothed demon was crouching down, pissed off looking, right beside their car. They turned around to run to the porch, and the whole time they hear what sounds like a dog running after them, snarling at the back of their feet. It stopped once they made it to the porch. They go inside to their room, freaked out about what just happened. Her little girl, Haley, pointed up at the corner of their room and started saying, "Papi," which is what she would call old men like her grandpa. Then, all of a sudden, the radio on the alarm clock turned on and it started scanning through all of the stations. My dad quickly started recording on the camera what's going on. Jennifer picked up the radio. She put it up to her ear because she could hear talking. A second later, her head gets yanked back by her hair, and this face pops in and smiles at the camera. It was like the same faces in the windows. See-through, black eyes, black mouth, creepy as hell. More things happened after that, but I've already went on for so long. This haunting never stopped until my dad and Jennifer broke up. And then suddenly, it just ended. That was it. And everything was back to normal. It was like a spell was broken. I have no idea what caused this. I don't know. Was it a relationship between Jennifer and my dad? I don't know what it was. But all I can say, it was more terrifying than any movie. Wow, that's a pretty dramatic, terrifying experience. Just the whole thing is just, it sounds like this house is just filled with these evil spirits, just focused in that one area. And goodness knows what brought them into that house in the first place. What happened there? What is it in that land or that house that opened that doorway to these things? And what about this relationship? This, that when they broke up, this haunting stopped. That's really bizarre. Definitely sounds like something demonic anyway. The haunted railroad tracks. My dad told me this story once. Some years back, it was around the 90s, my dad was going in the late night to his mother, to see his mom. It was pitch black because it had snowed, and so he was going for about 2 hours. Just it was like a long, long trip. Where I'm from, there's a specific railroad track section that is known to be haunted by many people, and a lot of people have lost their lives there because of there've been suicides, there was war, and just accidents and things like that. But for some strange reason, a lot of people just died in that particular spot. And the interesting thing about that too is that almost all these people were not originally from my home city or even the nearest areas, but from much larger towns. So a lot of people were really afraid of this railroad section because it was known to be haunted. And at one point, they even called a priest to come and purify or cleanse that area to drive away whatever was there. But when he came, he was so terrified that he said he couldn't do anything about it. And he told the people there that it was really, really negative energy there and they should just avoid it because this was a dangerous place. And if they did venture there, there was a strong possibility that they would lose their lives. Something would happen to them. He could feel this, but he was just too afraid to really do anything about it. He didn't even want to go there. So back to the main story. My father went through that place as a shortcut because he didn't want to waste so much time trying to get to his mom's. So he decided to go through that section of the rails. And he told me he was never that scared in his whole life as he was when he walked through that area. He could really, really feel like there were all these dead people watching him. He told me he actually saw the dead people, and some of these were friends and family, and they were calling to him to come to them, and they looked just like, relatives. But he knew there was something wrong with this, and he knew that if he was to follow them and he would go further, that he would get hit by a train. And it seemed to happen over and over, and he was just so terrified that he thought he would never get out of there. The scary fact is also that next to that railroad track is a bigger section of woods where apparently many people have committed suicide. My own experience with this was also really scary, and it was a time when I was walking through that area and it was late at night. And all of a sudden, I heard screams, and I heard them, and then I heard footsteps of some really hard boots. And it was like those of a soldier, a soldier would wear during the war. Next night, me and a good friend of mine, we went to check this out. But we just couldn't stand the energy there for very long. I can't explain it other than that it is so bad that all you want to do is just run out of there. The place was so heavy, and all of a sudden, we also heard these screams, and these footsteps were just coming towards us closer and closer. And my friend also heard this. And we decided we will never, no matter what, we will never walk past that area again. It is just not worth it. The feeling is just so terrifying that I can't even put it into words. A strange dream. I got home from college one day and I started reading and then I went to bed. It was a normal night, or so I thought. So I was dreaming that I was drowning, and literally another person like me appeared in my dream. He smiled at me and said, "You're going to die." Then I woke up, almost drowned. I wasn't breathing while I was sleeping and couldn't breathe through my mouth properly. I took a deep breath and went back to sleep. I literally couldn't stay awake. I fell asleep immediately. Then I dreamt I was with a cousin in my room, and we were going to open the door, and I couldn't reach the lock. He looked at me, smiled at me, and told me, "You're going to die." I woke up again, and the procedure from before was repeated. I fell asleep again, and then in the dream, I'm with two friends, and I tried to talk to them, but they wouldn't listen to me. Then they saw me, smiled, and said, "You're going to die." I woke up again, but this time I couldn't take a breath. I was literally not breathing. My whole body felt like it had tingles. Like when one foot falls asleep, only that I felt it all over my body and it hurt a lot. I also felt a loud ringing in my ears. I felt as if my eardrums were going to break at any moment, and I also felt as if something was on top of me and it would not let me move. So I thought of my loved ones and that I could not die yet. So I mentally said, "God, get this demon out of me." And this is where things get unreal. I felt my body contorting. I heard the cymbals sound loudly, and then a light came out of my body, and finally, I felt like someone had pushed me hard in the middle of my chest. And then I didn't feel anything else. I was able to breathe again through my mouth. I turned on the light in my room, and there was blood coming out of my nostrils. That night, I did not sleep, and I just thought, like, okay, this is the reason why I could not breathe. And I did not give more importance to the matter. I was trying to convince myself that I had dreamed everything. And when it was time to go to university, I undressed and got into the shower. I looked between my chest, and I had a pretty thick cut there, and something deep, since there was still blood coming out. And that's when I realized that crap had not been a dream. I don't know, maybe someone was playing a Ouija that night with my soul or something. It was terrifying. I don't know what happened. The silver moose. I was maybe about 16 or 17, and I was going fast home from a party on my skidoo late one night. It was a full moon. It was a cloudless night, and the moon just illuminated the hills and trees of the northern prairie landscape. I was darting between forests along a trail I knew well. Ahead was the river, but my trail crossed it in a place that was reliably frozen solid, especially in a cold February like this one. As I was approaching the river, my trail was a narrow path, woven between poplar and black spruce. Then, all of a sudden, a massive moose that was silver in the moonlight stepped onto the trail, blocking my path completely. I hit the brake, nearly flying over the handlebars. But I was on a Bravo, so I wouldn't have ever had enough speed to fly off, and skidded to a stop just before the river. Shaking, I looked up and into the bush and saw absolutely no signs of the moose. I figured maybe I was tired and maybe I shouldn't have had a couple of beers earlier on and I was seeing things. I was still a bit out of sorts as I sat back down and started slowly towards the river. Except as soon as I saw the river, I saw that it was open. Had I not stopped, I would have hit the open waters going too fast to stop in time, on a sled too small and slow to skip across it. I would have fallen into the river, all alone at -20. If I'd made it out, nobody would have been there to help me. I certainly would have died. I have no explanation for that silver moose, but I don't know what to think. But that night, that moose saved my life. And if that is what ghosts are like, well, I'm not afraid of ghosts. a very special and beautiful experience indeed. Certainly sounds like some kind of guardian being, animal spirit, guardian angel, whatever you want to call it. Very nice.